Hey everybody, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am one of the senior editors at MyJo in Toronto, and I am back again with another Boris TV tutorial. This time we're going to take a look at an effect that mimics a real-world situation. And the effect I'm talking about is lens blur. Now, lens blur mimics an actual blurring of the lens where what happens is where you actually take your camera, and as you start to take it out of focus, what's going to happen is that the highlights of the image are actually going to take on the shape of the lens diaphragm. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, what's going to happen is in this situation, as you can see with the image in front of you, what we have is a depth of field situation going on here where our talent in the foreground is in focus and our background is out of focus. And as you can see, what's happening in the highlights is we have a very cool triangular highlight that's going on. And this is the type of effect that you can create with lens blur. And the funny thing is that once you see how this effect works and what you can do with it, you're going to start noticing this effect popping up all over the place. I actually just saw it in an episode of Law & Order LA. It was a shot that jumped out at me right away because my very first thought was, you know what? That's a very simple shot to create using an effect like lens blur. And I'm going to show you how simple it is to do inside of Avid's Media Composer right now. Okay, so let's quit out of QuickTime and let's Command Tab into Avid's Media Composer. Now, one thing I want to point out about this shot, first of all, the shot that I chose from Digital Juice's Video Tracks HD, is that you can actually see that we already have an effect applied, and this actually is not an effect that's been applied. This is an actual camera situation where the camera created these highlights. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this shot and we're going to improve on it, even though it's already a great looking shot. And we're going to take these circles and we're going to change them to the triangles that you saw in the introduction. And it's very, very simple to do. This is one thing I love about this effect. It's really versatile, and you can take shots that might already have this effect on it and take it and alter it to the way that you need it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this clip and we're going to drop it into our timeline. Now, we're actually going to be doing this as a matte key. We're actually going to have two layers, and in one layer, I'm going to have our poker player here matted out over top of the background. Now, you can actually do this inside of the effect, and it's actually called a Z map. And what a Z map essentially is that it's just a matte key, a black and white cutout that the effect would reference to do what we're going to do here. But in this case, since I have the shot already and I'm going to be using the shot as the reference to cut out, I'm just going to have our poker player here on the top channel matted out, and we're going to apply the lens blur to the entire background because our top layer is going to have our poker player on it. So we're not going to need a Z map in this situation. But if you'd like to know more about the Z map and how it works, you can watch the tutorial I did about using lens blur inside Adobe's After Effects to get a better understanding and then apply that information inside of Avid's Media Composer. Okay, so I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to drop it into my timeline, and I'm going to press Command and Y on the Mac, Control and Y on Windows to create a new layer. What I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take the same shot and we're going to drop it onto the top layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back to the beginning here, and I'm going to come over to my little monitor here, and I'm going to hold Command on the Mac, Control on Windows, and I'm just going to click on my little screen here. Now what this actually does is that it solos this channel. So what I can do now is I could come in and I can do some effects to this, or I can even crop it, and we're not going to see what's going on with the layer below it, which is good. Now I've already gone in and created the matte for this. Now if you wanted to create a matte for whatever type of shot you happen to be working with, the tool that I suggest using, and we're just going to press Command and 8 on the Mac, Control and 8 on Windows, and if you come all the way down here to Key, I would suggest using Animat. What is Animat, you ask? Well, Animat is basically a way to create animated mattes or masks inside of the Media Composer interface. And it's very simple to do, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm just going to take Animat, I'm just going to drag it down here onto the topmost layer. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually zoom back on my layer here, on my canvas here, by pressing minus on the keyboard, just like that. Let's make sure we have the window selected. There we go. I'm going to step into effects mode by pressing Shift and Y on the keyboard. And again, if you don't have it mapped on your keyboard, you can simply come right over here and click on the effects mode button. I'm going to press Shift and Y, and let's just zoom back again here, just like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the tools on the right-hand side, and I'm just going to select right here the curve tool. What I can do now is simply just drag around my poker player like this, and you'll see that in a matter of seconds, just like that, we now have our layer as a matte, just like that. Now, what I could do at this point is just step back into effects mode. I can add a keyframe here, and let's just say, you know, we came down a little bit. I could then take this and sort of animate it however I wanted to, And you'll see that you can easily animate from keyframe to keyframe. And if I wanted to really get in and adjust this, what I could do is simply just add a keyframe here and say, you know what, show me all the individual points in here. You know, I could take points and start sticking them out like this or like that. And you can see that as the matte moves, it's going to adjust it exactly the way that you needed it. So Animat is a simple tool to use, but it's also a very effective one to create animated masks inside of Media Composer. And the cool thing is that if you're more into rotoscoping, there's actually a paintbrush tool right here that you could get in and paint the individual frames to get the mask exactly the way that you want it. Now, I'm not going to go too much more into Animat because obviously this is a tutorial about lens blur. So I've actually already created the matte that I'm going to want to use. And I'm just going to hit F5 on the keyboard. That is my shortcut to remove an effect. Or I could have just come right up here and you can see there's remove effect right at the top of my timeline. What I'm going to do is take the Animat that I already created. I'm just going to drag it right down here onto my shot. And you can see that it's basically just a very straightforward, simple, feathered mask, just like that. Very simple, nothing too complicated. And what we're going to do now is just focus on the background. Because I don't care if this guy blurs because I have the layer above it that has just my poker player on it that's going to cover over any blur that's done to our poker player. So let's just select our video layer 1 and we're going to navigate all the way back up to the top. And lens blur, because obviously it is a blur, is right here inside of color and blurs. And we're just going to scroll down here and there it is right there, lens blur. I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it right down here onto my shot just like that and let go. And as soon as I do, you're going to notice now that the entire shot is blurred. So let's get in and tailor this exactly the way that we want. So I'm going to step into effects mode here by pressing again Shift and Y on my keyboard. Let's make sure my layer is selected here. The one we want, video 1, Shift and Y, there we go. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to set the shape of the actual lens itself. Now you saw before it was a triangle. A triangle is a 3-sided shape. So I'm going to come right down here and you can see where it says iris shape. And I'm just going to set that to be 3 sides, just like that. You'll see that as soon as I do, my highlights over here have now changed to triangles. And if I want to actually see what the iris shape is, I can actually just click on View Iris right here. And you can see it's a triangle right there in the middle. So let's just turn that off because I know that it's going to be a triangle. And let's get in and let's just adjust our iris scale first. So I'm just going to set this. You can see it's set at 15 right now. Let's just bump it up a little bit and put it at about 20, just like that, just so we got a little bit more blur happening. So I'm pretty happy with the way that this looks. The only problem is that it doesn't stand out like it did before. And I want it to be just as good, but in most cases I want it to be better than it looked originally when the iris shape was almost a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate all the way down here to highlights. And you can see right here that I have a highlight boost, and right now it's set to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to be about 15. And I want you to watch what happens right over here in my timeline as soon as I hit enter. You can see all of the highlights have now bumped up, and those triangles are very, very easy to see. And now what you can do is if I come over here and I click on video layer 2, you can see that the effect that we're going to get, very, very nice. And if you wanted to see a before and after of this, what I can do is I'm just going to come down here, make sure I'm still selected on video 1. I'm just going to come up to the top of the effect and bypass it. I want you to watch what happens over here on the slot machines when I click on bypass. You can see what it was before and what it is now. You can see that we've taken what was there, a circle, we've now made it a triangle, and nobody would ever know the difference once we put our poker player back up on layer 2, just like that. Now, you can see that I got a little bit of a, sort of a hard feather here. I could get in the Animat and feather that even more so nobody would be able to tell the difference. Okay, now what I want to do is I actually want to have these triangles rotate a little bit over the entire duration of the shot. And that as well is something that's very easy to do. What I'm going to do is navigate right back to the beginning of the shot right there. And we're going to navigate over back to the effect editor. And we're going to head back to the iris section. And you can see right here we have iris rotation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the effects editor over a little bit. And I'm just going to right click in here and add a keyframe for the iris rotation. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down to the end of my clip. And again, I'm going to right click in here and add another keyframe. And I'm going to set that value to be 180 degrees. And as soon as I hit enter, I want you to again watch what happens over here in my shot. Look at that. So now that I have the keyframe set, as I scroll through my shot, you're going to see the triangles rotate as the shot progresses to create a very cool look in my timeline. Now, one thing I do want to remind you of before I go on is that if you wanted to get right in here and get a quick comparison of what the before and after of this shot looked like, you can always use compare mode that's included with this effect. I'm just going to drop down compare mode and I'm going to turn it on to be compare, and you can see what I can do now is simply drag this over just like that, and we can see a before and an after of what it looked like before we applied the effect. This is how you can easily get in and fine-tune the shot, and I should point out that compare is a feature that's included inside of most of the effects inside of Boris Continuum Complete. So I hope you see that with Lens Blur, it's a great way that you can mimic real-world situations that a lot of cameramen will do inside the camera. The only problem is in a lot of cases, a producer will look at something and say, ugh, I wish the cameraman had done that. Well, guess what? Now you can say, you know what? It's no problem. I've got Boris Continuum Complete. So if you have any questions, comments, or tutorial requests, send them to support@boriseffects.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.